Christopher Cleveland. That was before he filed suit against Cleveland's estate, alleging 5 years of sexual contact that ended with Harris testing positive for HIV. He promised that he would help me. He just played it to his advantage. He used my naivety to his gain, Harris said.
And the people are so hungry to hear her do an interpretation of gospel.
And all you gotta say, Jesus, is be still.
James Cleveland, celebrated as the king of gospel, his contributions to gospel music were undeniable, and his influence reached far and wide. But after his death, shocking revelations emerged that cast a dark and unsettling shadow over his legacy, shaking the gospel community to its core.
They paid to go see James Cleveland, church folk. Well, it was well known that James Cleveland was homosexual.
These disturbing truths came to light through Cleveland's son. What could have been so shocking that it stayed hidden for so long? If you've ever wondered about the real story behind James Cleveland, now's your chance to learn what his son has revealed. I mean, the man once celebrated for his divine music with iconic hits like Lord, Help Me to Hold Out, Peace Be Still, and I Don't Feel No Ways Tired. Cleveland's powerful voice and inspirational songs earned him a revered place in the hearts of millions, found himself posthumously facing accusations that would forever tarnish his name, earning him the controversial title of the most evil man in gospel.
And all you gotta say, Jesus, is be still.
As earlier mentioned, these disturbing truths came to light through Cleveland's former foster son, Christopher Harris. Harris, who had once taken on the name Christopher Cleveland, was a young member of James Cleveland's church choir in Los Angeles. At just 13 years old, Harris stood out from the rest of the choir with his impressive 6-foot frame, singing as the only boy alto. Looking older than his age and filled with dreams of a singing career, Harris caught Cleveland's eye. What initially seemed like a mentorship quickly turned into something far more sinister.
The case of the Reverend James Cleveland may best epitomize the magnitude of the site in terms of homosexuality. And Christopher Harris certainly feels this way. When he was 13, Harris was the only boy alto in the choir at Cleveland's Los Angeles church.
According to Harris, Cleveland's interest in him soon crossed troubling lines. Harris alleged that Cleveland began abusing him when he was just 13, and that this abuse continued for 5 long years. What was supposed to be a nurturing relationship between a mentor and a young singer instead became a nightmare. Cleveland, a towering figure in the gospel world, used his influence and position to manipulate and exploit Harris. The young man, filled with hope for a promising future, was taken advantage of in ways that would leave lasting scars. The abuse, Harris claimed, eventually led to him contracting HIV. In the years following Cleveland's death, Harris filed a lawsuit against his estate, seeking justice for the abuse he endured.
Christopher Cleveland. That was before he filed suit against Cleveland's estate, alleging 5 years of sexual contact that ended with Harris testing positive for HIV.
While the case was ultimately settled out of court, with Harris prohibited from sharing the specific details of the settlement, he has spoken openly about the trauma he experienced. He recounted how Cleveland, someone he once admired, manipulated him under the guise of mentorship, exploiting his dreams and his youth for his own dark purposes.
The case was settled out of court. The terms prohibit him from discussing the settlement. He promised that he would help me. He just played it to his advantage. He used my naivety to his gain, Harris said.
Harris's revelations were not only shocking, but also brought to light a broader issue within the gospel music community and the church itself. Cleveland's orientation had long been an open secret. Many in his inner circle and within the church were aware of his relationships with young men, but few were willing to speak out.
People at church knew, but they pretended that it didn't exist. I guess what you don't see, you can't say.
There was a pervasive culture of silence and denial, a collective decision to ignore what was happening, allowing Cleveland's behavior to continue unchecked. This culture of complacency protected Cleveland's reputation during his lifetime, but created an environment where abuse could thrive behind closed doors. In addition to the allegations of abuse, Harris hinted at a deeper mystery surrounding Cleveland's death. Officially, James Cleveland's death in 1991 was attributed to heart failure, but Harris suggested that this diagnosis might have been a cover-up.
No, he didn't die of heart failure. Heart failure is just a delusion, Harris said, nearly laughing.
While Harris never explicitly revealed what he believed to be the true cause of Cleveland's death, his cryptic statements have fueled speculation. Some have wondered if Cleveland's death was related to his HIV status, and if those close to him worked to keep this information from the public to preserve his legacy. These questions have remained unanswered, adding yet another layer of intrigue and controversy to Cleveland's life and death. But that wasn't the only drama that followed James Cleveland after his death. When he passed away, he left behind a legal mess that was far from easy to untangle, all because he didn't leave a will. One of the biggest controversies involved Andre Cleveland, a music producer who claimed to be Cleveland's adopted son. Andre believed he was entitled to a share of James's estate and took the fight to court to get what he thought was his due. Andre, whose real name is Andre Makisic, said he had been like a foster son to James Cleveland. The story went back to when Andre's mother, Esther Makisic, moved to Los Angeles in 1968. She met James Cleveland, and they ended up living in his home for a whopping 12 years. From the time Andre was 12 years old until he turned 24, James supported him, both emotionally and financially. Andre even claimed that Cleveland had talked about adopting him, but his mother refused because she wanted Andre to keep her surname. Despite the lack of formal adoption papers, Andre considered James his father in every sense of the word. In fact, James even listed Andre as a dependent on his tax returns. So when James Cleveland passed away without a will, Andre figured he had a rightful claim to part of the estate. He argued that, under a specific probate law, foster children or stepchildren could inherit if they could prove that the deceased would have adopted them if not for some legal obstacle. Andre filed petitions in court, hoping to transfer some of Cleveland's property to his estate. But things didn't go as smoothly as Andre had hoped. The court had a different interpretation of the situation. They pointed out that once Andre turned 18, there wasn't any legal barrier to Cleveland adopting him. In fact, Andre had turned 18 16 years before James's death, meaning James had plenty of time to formalize the adoption if he had wanted to, but he didn't. Because of that, the court decided Andre didn't qualify under the probate law and wasn't entitled to inherit. The trustee of Cleveland's estate, Anette May Thomas, didn't make things easier for Andre either. She opposed his petitions and argued that Andre wasn't legally adopted and only mentioned as a friend and godson in Cleveland's trust. Andre was left with a specific gift of $10,000 from the estate, which he had already received. But beyond that, Anette didn't think Andre had any standing to ask for more, and she filed for summary judgment to block him from claiming any of Cleveland's property. The court agreed with Anette. The judge ruled that Andre didn't meet the legal criteria to be considered an interested person under probate law. Since Andre's mother's refusal to allow the adoption wasn't an issue after Andre turned 18, Cleveland had every opportunity to adopt him afterward, but didn't. With that, Andre's case for inheriting part of the estate was shut down. Still, Andre wasn't ready to give up. He appealed the decision, hoping that the appellate court might see things differently. Unfortunately for Andre, they didn't. The appellate court upheld the summary judgment, emphasizing that the probate law required a legal barrier to adoption to be the only reason an adoption didn't take place. Since Andre's mother's refusal no longer applied after he became an adult, and Cleveland didn't pursue adoption at that point, the court decided Andre had no legal claim to the estate. Another fascinating chapter in James Cleveland's life revolves around his daughter, LaShawn Cleveland, and her mother, Jean Irvin. In October 1991, Jean Irvin, a member of the Cornerstone Institutional Baptist Church, stepped into the spotlight with a bold claim. She publicly declared that she was the mother of Cleveland's only biological child, LaShawn Cleveland, who was born in 1965. This revelation came as quite a surprise since the existence of LaShawn and her relationship with Cleveland hadn't been widely publicized during his lifetime. Jean's statement stirred up even more attention when she also claimed that Andre M. Cleveland, often thought to be Cleveland's adopted son, wasn't actually adopted. According to her, Andre was one of many homeless children Cleveland had taken in over the years, painting his relationship with Andre in a more charitable light. This new detail cast doubt on the nature of Andre's adoption, suggesting that Cleveland's generosity towards kids in need was mistaken for formal adoption, which added yet another layer of complexity to Cleveland's personal life. LaShawne's existence, in contrast, was kept more private during Cleveland's life. But once Gene spoke out, it brought his daughter into the public eye. LaShawn may have lived in the background of Cleveland's public persona, but she certainly wasn't forgotten in terms of his estate. Before Cleveland passed away, he made sure that LaShawn was taken care of. His estate documents clearly stated that she would receive a portion of his assets, ensuring her financial security. This wasn't just a legal move, but a clear expression of Cleveland's love and responsibility as a father, despite the ups and downs of their relationship. With the complicated legal battles and family dynamics surrounding Cleveland's estate, LaShawne's inclusion stands out as a testament to the bond they shared. While many aspects of Cleveland's life were marked by controversy, his efforts to provide for LaShawn underscored his paternal commitment, even if his personal life was often overshadowed by his gospel music career and the controversies that followed him.
58 years old. And I said if the Lord would allow me to see that birthday, I would have been in gospel 50 years.
Now, to understand what shaped James Cleveland and brought him to this point, let's dive into his early years. Born on December 5th, 1931, in Chicago, Cleveland grew up in a city that was alive with the sound of gospel music. His parents were hardworking and deeply religious, raising him in a home where faith and music were inseparable. But it was his grandmother who really played a pivotal role in his upbringing. She was the one who introduced young James to Pilgrim Baptist Church, a place that would later become central to his career and spiritual life. Cleveland's natural talent for music revealed itself at a young age. At just 8 years old, he made his solo debut with the church choir, leaving an impression on everyone who heard him. At Pilgrim Baptist Church, Cleveland came under the mentorship of Thomas A. Dorsey, a gospel legend known as the father of gospel music. Dorsey's guidance had a profound influence on Cleveland and played a crucial part in shaping his future as one of gospel music's greats.
To obey, no matter where.
In addition to Dorsey, another major figure in Cleveland's early life was Roberta Martin, a renowned gospel singer and pianist who also performed at Pilgrim Baptist. Cleveland idolized Martin, and her influence on him was undeniable. It was Martin and her group, the Roberta Martin Singers, who helped mold Cleveland's unique style of gospel music. Inspired by Martin's incredible talent, young James began composing his own music, which would later define his career and help him become one of the most influential voices in gospel. However, life wasn't always easy for Cleveland growing up. He came of age during the Great Depression, a time when money was tight and luxuries were few and far between. His family couldn't afford a piano, but Cleveland didn't let that stop him. He made do by practicing on the windowsill of his home, using the crevices and wedges as imaginary piano keys. He often recalled how he would sit there, tapping away on his makeshift piano, dreaming of the day when he could perform on a real one. Despite the financial hardships, Cleveland's dedication to music never wavered. By the time he was in high school, his parents managed to scrape together enough money to buy him an upright piano. That was a turning point for Cleveland. With a real instrument at his fingertips, he practiced tirelessly, developing a style that blended traditional gospel with the jazz influences he picked up along the way. His talent was undeniable, and it wasn't long before he began attracting attention for his extraordinary musical abilities. As a teenager, James Cleveland's musical journey continued to evolve when he joined a local gospel group called the Thorn Gospel Crusaders. It was here that his talent as a composer truly started to shine. The group quickly began featuring his compositions, and his work caught the attention of some of the biggest names in the gospel music community. One of his earliest compositions, Grace is Sufficient, became a major turning point. When it was performed at a Baptist convention in 1948, it was so impressive that Roberta Martin, one of gospel music's most prominent figures, decided to start publishing his work. This marked the beginning of James Cleveland's professional career and solidified his place in the gospel music world. Around this time, James also became involved with the Soul Winners for Christ, a missionary group founded by his teenage friend Jesse Jemerson Phillips. Based at Chicago's Greater Harvest Baptist Church, the group included several other notable members, like Richard D. Hennon. Being part of the Soul Winners for Christ not only helped James grow as a musician, but it also deepened his connection to his faith and further cemented his commitment to gospel music. However, it wasn't always smooth sailing for the young Cleveland. One of the most significant challenges he faced as a young singer was an injury to his vocal cords. While singing with a local group, he strained his voice so severely that it permanently changed his sound. But rather than viewing it as a setback, James embraced this new gravelly tone. It became a defining feature of his performances and added a raw, emotional depth to his singing, which audiences would later come to love. His voice, paired with his powerful compositions, made him a standout talent in the gospel world. By 1950, James Cleveland was ready to make a big impact on the gospel scene. He joined the Gospelaires, a dynamic trio led by Norales McKeesick and Bessie Folk. This group was all about bringing a modern touch to traditional gospel music, and Cleveland's arrangements of classics like Give Me That Old-Time Religion and It's Me, O Lord gave these familiar songs a fresh energy. However, the Gospelaires didn't last long, and when the group disbanded, Cleveland found himself working alongside one of his early idols, Roberta Martin. Roberta Martin, who had already been a huge influence on James during his youth, hired him as a composer and arranger. This collaboration marked a major turning point in his career, but his true big break came with his powerful rendition of Peace Be Still. This song became an instant hit and catapulted Cleveland into the gospel music spotlight, establishing him as one of the genre's rising stars.
Be still.
Next, James began working with his childhood friend Albertina Walker, who had founded a gospel group called the Caravans. The Caravans would go on to become a legendary group and a launchpad for many future gospel superstars. Cleveland took on multiple roles in the group, serving as a composer, arranger, pianist, occasional singer, and even a narrator. The Caravans were a powerhouse group, boasting incredible talents like Shirley Caesar, who would later become known as the First Lady of Gospel, and Setta George, who co-wrote some of their biggest hits. Other members included Dolores Washington, Josephine Howard, Inez Andrews, Dorothy Norwood, James Herron, and Loleatta Holloway, all of whom would leave a lasting mark on gospel music. In November 1954, Albertina Walker gave Cleveland a major opportunity when she convinced States Records to let him record with the Caravans. This marked the first time James Cleveland entered a recording studio, and it was the beginning of something big. Over the next few years, Cleveland continued to record with the Caravans, helping them create some of their most iconic music. This period was crucial in establishing Cleveland's reputation as a major force in the gospel scene. Cleveland's work with the Caravans continued until States Records shut down in 1957, but by then, his reputation was solid. He had become known for his distinctive voice, his innovative compositions, and his ability to bring new life to traditional gospel music. His collaborations with Albertina Walker continued well into the late 1970s, producing albums like Reunion in 1977 and the iconic Please Be Patient With Me in 1979.
Please be patient with me. God is not through with me yet.
The latter earned Walker her first gold record and further solidified Cleveland's status as a gospel legend. James Cleveland's career didn't slow down as the 1960s began. In 1959, he recorded a gospel version of Ray Charles's hit, Hallelujah, I Love Her So, and by 1960, he was incorporating blues riffs into his gospel music, blending genres in a way that made his sound even more distinctive. One of his standout tracks was his rendition of the Soul Stirrers song, The Love of God, backed by the Voices of Tabernacle from Detroit. This song was a major hit, earning him a record deal that would change his life forever. In 1962, Cleveland signed with Savoy Records, a historic jazz label. This partnership produced a vast collection of soul gospel recordings, many of which were recorded live in concert settings. Cleveland worked with Reverend Lawrence Roberts, the pastor of First Baptist Church in Nutley, New Jersey, to capture the spirit of live worship on these recordings. Together, they released several albums, including the now iconic Peace Be Still in September 1963. The album was a massive success, selling thousands of copies and earning Cleveland his first gold record. It stayed on the Billboard charts for over 15 years, a testament to its lasting impact. With his growing fame, Cleveland moved to Los Angeles, where he became the minister of music at Grace Memorial Church of God in Christ. While there, he collaborated with keyboardist Billy Preston and the Angelic Choir of Nutley, New Jersey, further boosting his popularity. During this time, he also formed the James Cleveland Singers, a group that featured Odessa McCassell, Georgia White, Eugene Bryant, and Billy Preston. By 1965, his group included Clyde Brown and Charles Barnett, and they began touring extensively across the United States and internationally. Their performances in major venues drew large crowds, and they recorded popular songs like Heaven That Will Be Good Enough for Me, Two Wings, and The Lord Is Blessing Me Right Now. Over the years, other talented singers joined the James Cleveland Singers, including Marva Hines and Cleo Kennedy, a renowned soprano soloist. Both were key members of the group until Cleveland's passing. As his career continued to soar, Cleveland capitalized on his fame by founding the Southern California Community Choir, SCC. This move solidified his legacy even further, as the choir became a powerhouse in the gospel music world. In 1975, Cleveland won his first Grammy Award with the SCC for their 1974 album, In the Ghetto, a monumental moment in his career.
In the ghetto.
This Grammy win marked the start of many successful collaborations between Cleveland and the SCC. From 1970 to 1990, they released several albums, including the 1979 hit, It's a New Day, which featured the popular track, God Is. This song was one of their most successful and cemented Cleveland's position as a leader in the gospel world. Another standout album was their 1981 release, Where Is Your Faith, which further solidified the choir's reputation in the gospel music scene. Cleveland's final Grammy came posthumously in 1991 for the album Having Church, which featured his iconic rendition of Tremaine Hawkins' What Shall I Do? In November 1970, Cleveland took a significant step by founding Cornerstone Institutional Baptist Church in Los Angeles. What began as a small church soon grew to thousands of members under his leadership. His first album with the church choir, The Voices of Cornerstone, was released in 1980 and included memorable tracks like Jesus, Lover of My Soul, and A Praying Spirit. Cleveland's work extended beyond gospel music, as he also collaborated with mainstream artists such as Aretha Franklin, Ray Charles, and Elton John. In addition to his musical achievements, Cleveland co-founded the Gospel Music Workshop of America, GMWA, with Albertina Walker. This annual convention quickly became a hub for aspiring gospel musicians and grew exponentially, boasting over 150 chapters and 30,000 members. The GMWA played a crucial role in launching the careers of some of gospel music's biggest names, including Donald Vales, Isaac Douglas, V. Michael McKay, and more recent artists like Kirk Franklin, Donald Lawrence, Yolanda Adams, and John P. Key. In the year leading up to his death, Cleveland struggled with respiratory issues, which left him unable to sing. However, on the last Sunday before his passing, he addressed his congregation at Cornerstone Institutional Baptist Church with a powerful message. If I don't see you again, and if I don't sing again, I'm a witness to the fact that the Lord answers prayer. He let my voice come back to me this morning. His words left an indelible mark on those present. James Cleveland passed away on February 9, 1991, in Culver City, California, at the age of 59. His cause of death was reported as congestive heart failure, and he had fallen into a coma shortly before his death. His passing was a profound loss for the gospel community, and his funeral at the Shrine Auditorium in Los Angeles drew over 8,000 mourners. The turnout was a testament to the enormous impact Cleveland had on so many lives. James Cleveland was laid to rest at Inglewood Park Cemetery in Inglewood, California, but his legacy lives on through his music and the countless artists he influenced.